Hi, guys. This week we're going to continue reading Frederick Douglass. We're going to be on chapter 2. We're going to separate it into 2 days. That's Whitman. Whitman! Whit! He doesn't want any parts of you guys. Okay, so we're going to read this. Give me one sec. Whitman, come on. Good boy. All right, so as you're reading, if you see over on the side, these are kind of my annotations or the questions that I'm asking you guys to think about as you read. So what you might want to do is read it one time through, and then the second time that you're reading, really pause and reflect as you're reading. Who are these characters? What is Douglas trying to say? I've said it, hundreds of times. He is a master of the language. He really knows what he's doing, and everything is done on purpose. So just getting an appreciation of those little things that he does can really help with your own writing and really evaluating other people's writing as well. All right. So this is obviously in your Schoology folder for this week, Monday through Thursday. Remember, your Wednesday is a pandemic journal. So your classwork for this chapter 2 is going to be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. And then that Wednesday piece is going to be your pandemic journal. All right. I'm going to go full screen. All right. So remember that chapter 2 ended with those 3 paragraphs that were really powerful. They were very descriptive, and it was about Douglas as a child witnessing his aunt being beaten. And also kind of that experience was the first thing that taught him that he himself was a slave. He didn't understand or know that he was a slave until that experience happened. So this is going to be the second chapter. Chapter 2. My master's family consisted of 2 sons, Andrew and Richard, one daughter, Lucretia, and her husband, Captain Thomas Auld. So my comment on the side of the sentence says, remember his master is most likely his father. So when he says my master's family, it's really his family too. And this goes back to the themes that we were talking about in chapter 1, this idea of who is really family, and how does the institution of slavery destroy what we traditionally know as family. Because again, like this is his father. These are technically his half brothers and his half sister. So as he's talking about these people or describing these people, remember that this is Douglas's quote unquote family. Yeah, sorry, start reading again. They lived in one house upon the home plantation of Colonel Edward Lloyd. My master was Colonel Lloyd's clerk and superintendent. He was what might be called the overseer of the overseers. So he's like the big boss. I spent 2 years of childhood on this plantation in my old master's family. It was here that I witnessed the bloody transaction recorded in the first chapter. So that's that beating of his aunt Hester, which also I'm going to talk about for a second, because I'm not sure that a lot of people understood what happened there. His master was jealous. She was beautiful, and she didn't want to be with him, but he wanted to be with her. So when he found her with someone else, particularly someone who he thought was like lower class than him, that's what made him so angry. And when Douglas watches that beating happen, that's when he realizes like the differences between himself and the Lloyds, or the Anthonys, right? Okay. As I received my first impressions of slavery on this plantation, I will give some description of it and of slavery as it there existed. The plantation is about 12 miles north and east in Talbot County and is situated on the border of Miles River. The principal products raised upon it were tobacco, corn, and wheat. These were raised in great abundance, so that with the products of this and the other farms belonging to him, he was able to keep in almost constant employment a large sloop is a boat, in carrying them to market at Baltimore. This sloop was named Sally Lloyd in honor of the colonel's daughters. My master's son-in-law, Captain Auld, was master of the vessel. She was otherwise manned by the colonel's own slaves. Their names were Peter, Isaac, Rich, and Jake. These were esteemed very highly by the other slaves and looked upon as the privileged ones of the plantation. For it was no small affair in the eyes of the slaves to be allowed to see Baltimore. Um, Again, kind of this, there's this hierarchy within the slaves, the enslaved people on the plantation itself, of those who are jealous or have better jobs. And we'll see that later on as well. Colonel Lloyd kept from 300 to 400 slaves on his home plantation and owned a large number more on the neighboring farms belonging to him. The names of the farm nearest the home plantation were Y Town and New Design. Y Town was under the overseership of a man named Noah Willis. New Design was under the overseership of a Mr. Townsend. The overseers of these and all the rest of the farms, numbering over 20, received advice and direction from the managers of the home plantation. This was the great business place. It was the seat of government for the whole 20 farms. All disputes among the overseers were settled here. If a slave was convicted of any high misdemeanor, became unmanageable, or evinced a determination to run away, he was brought immediately here, severely whipped, put on aboard the sloop, carried to Baltimore, and sold to Austin Woolfolk or some other slave trader as a warning to the slaves remaining. I'm going to pause, do a little reflecting here. So this is kind of describing almost the business of slavery, right? Remember, Colonel Lloyd is the super rich guy who has these 300 to 400 slaves. And Douglas's master / probable father, Captain Anthony, he is Colonel Lloyd's kind of right-hand man. He's the one who kind of is the manager of all of the farms. But remember, Colonel Lloyd is the one who owns them. He's the Richie Rich, and then Captain Anthony is the superintendent or the manager, and that's who Douglas believes is his father. Okay, paragraph 3. So we're talking about the home farm now. It says, here too, the slaves of all the other farms receive their monthly allowance of food and their yearly clothing. So think about that. They get monthly food and yearly clothing. This isn't like, oh, I'm, kind of hungry. We can run out and go to the store or anything. Like, they have a certain amount of food that they have for the month that they are given. The men and women slaves receive as their monthly allowance of food 8 pounds of pork, or its equivalent in fish, and 1 bushel of cornmeal. So remember, you're also dividing that by 30 to get like a daily value of how much protein and cornmeal they're getting. So 8 pounds divided by 30. Their yearly clothing consisted of 2 coarse linen shirts, 1 pair of linen trousers, like at the shirts, 1 jacket, 1 pair of trousers for winter, made of coarse negro cloth, 1 pair of stockings, and 1 pair of shoes, the whole of which could not have cost more than $7. The allowance of the slave children was given to their mothers, or the old women having the care of them. The children, unable to work in the fields, had neither shoes, stockings, jackets, nor trousers given to them. Their clothing consisted of 2 coarse linen shirts per year. 2 shirts, guys. That's it. When these failed them, they were naked until the next day, allowance day, which would be a year, right? Once a year. Children from 7 to 10 years old of both sexes, almost naked, might be seen at all seasons of the year. Chapter 3, or paragraph 3. Paragraph 4. There were no beds given the slaves, unless 1 coarse blanket be considered such, and none but the men and women had these. So who does that leave out? Who doesn't get the coarse blanket? This, however, is not considered a very great privation. They find less difficulty from the want of beds than from the want of time to sleep. For when their day's work in the field is done, the most of them having their washing, mending, and cooking to do, and having few or none of the ordinary facilities for doing either of these, very many of their sleeping hours are consumed in preparing for the field the coming day. And this is done, old and young, male and female, married and single, drop down side by side on one common bed, the cold damp floor, each covering himself or herself with their miserable blankets. And here they sleep till they are summoned to the field by the driver's horn. So that was all one sentence that's highlighted there. And the reason that I highlighted that and I point out the fact that it's one sentence and it's a grammatically correct sentence is because this is all a part of Douglas's style. So why is this sentence so long? Why are there so many commas? Why is he saying so much information in this sentence? What is he trying to convey? At the sound of this, the horn, all must rise and be off to the field. There must be no halting. Everyone must be at his or her post, and woe betides them who hear not this morning's summons to the field. For if they are not awakened by the sense of hearing, they are by the sense of feeling. No age nor sex finds any favor. Mr. Severe, the overseer, used to stand by the door of the quarter, armed with a large hickory stick and heavy cowskin, ready to whip anyone who was so unfortunate as not to hear, or from any other cause, was prevented from being ready to start for the field at the sound of the horn. So, what do you think happens to the slaves who aren't? Douglas says, woe betides them. So, what do you think he means? What happens? Paragraph 5. Mr. Severe was rightly named. He was a cruel man. I have seen him whip a woman, causing the blood to run half an hour at the time, and this too in the midst of her crying children, pleading for their mother's release. He seemed to take pleasure in manifesting his fiendish barbarity. Added to his cruelty, he was a profane swearer. It was enough to chill the blood and stiffen the hair of an ordinary man to hear him talk. Scarce a sentence escaped him, but that was commenced or concluded by some horrid oath. The field was the place to witness his cruelty and profanity. His presence made it both the field of blood and of blasphemy. From the rising till the going down of the sun, he was cursing, raving, cutting, and slashing among the slaves of the field in the most frightful manner. His career was short. He died very soon after I went to Colonel Lloyd's, and he died as he lived, uttering, with his dying groans, bitter curses and horrid oaths. His death was regarded by the slave as the result of merciful providence. So providence is like a gift or a sign from God. And again, like when Douglas is describing these overseers or these slave owners, he does it with such detail and such description, and really to show you or the intended audience what slavery was really like, and how do you think people responded to this? Okay. Paragraph 6. Mr. Severe's place was filled by Mr. Hopkins. He was a very different man. He was less cruel, less profane, and made less noise than Mr. Severe. His course was characterized by no extraordinary demonstration of cruelty. He whipped, but seemed to take no pleasure in it. He was called by the slaves a good overseer. So Mr. Severe and Mr. Hopkins are kind of creating this kind of like contradiction of the different types of slave overseers. But still, if Mr. Hopkins is a quote unquote like good guy or good overseer, it still says like he still whips them, right? Like he's still doing the bad things. Okay. So I'm going to stop there. And if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And tomorrow we'll have the second part of the chapter. Bye, guys.